Let's now move on and start creating our non-player character. I'm going to jump back to my default layout here, and under the outliner, I'm going to type bot and select my bot controller. With my viewport selected, I'm going to push dot and zoom in on my guy. So I am temporarily going to make my bot visible back again. So I'm going to go under properties and object, and I am going to enable that he's part of the geometry render layer, at least for now. And I am going to go under skeletal mesh, and under the geometry render layer, I am going to bring back his limbs material and its joints material. I am going to push tab with my viewport selected to at least see how it looked like. And I am going to go under its member variable by selecting properties object and add a new member variable of the type color. And I'm going to access the variable setting, and I'm going to call it base color because it's going to be passed as a uniform. And I want to pass this base color to be only for the material that is assigned on the first primitive of my object. So I'm going to add the identifier .0 and specify it is a primitive. So like that, only base color, the variable name, will be sent over to as a uniform to my first primitive material. I'm going to confirm, and like that, I am able now to change the color of my bot here. For each and every bot that we're going to respawn, they all going to have a unique color, keeping our player with the color white, just like that. Restore his ammo also at 100. So now basically what I want to do is I want to create a copy of my hierarchy that start at bot controller. So I'm going to select my bot controller and click Shift and D to create a duplicate. I am going to drag that duplicate on the side, and obviously I am also going to need a gun. So I'm going to select my gun here, and I'm going to click Shift and D to create a duplicate of that gun, drag it over here, and I actually want the gun to don't be connected to my camera, but connected to the right hand of my robot. So with my blaster selected, I am going to hold Shift and select my bot and select his right hand right about here. I'm going to push Control and R to create a relationship. And next, I am going to select my blaster once again and access its object properties. And I am going to remove the depth range because I'm not going to need it for this guy. And I am now going to change the orientation to be in local space, and I am going to put it in the hand of my guy here. So I already fiddled with these value earlier. Let's do that in the code editor. It's going to be faster to do it this way. So under coding, I am going to bring my blaster, and let's paste that here. You can enter them manually, of course. So it's just to speed things up, and I am going to just simply copy paste the location, XYZ, and the rotation here. Obviously this gun have not been built for this specific bot, but that will do. And this is the rotation, and for the scale, X and Y and Z. Just like that, we can delete this code. Let's go back to our default layout and have a look. We can see that now the gun look pretty much like it is in his hand. He got his hand plus or minus on the trigger here. I can also lift it up a bit, I think. Lift it up here to make it look more like he's holding the trigger, something like that. You can play with that. Simply go in local space and the orientation local space, and after that start playing with the values here to ensure that it look like the gun is actually in its hand. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to select our new bot controller that we have created here. It starts to have many lines. It's hard to pick up. We should definitely start creating a different object group. If you go under properties and scene, you have access to object group that basically act as a data layer or a collection in Blender. You can select multiple objects and make them part of a certain group that you can turn on off. We should have done that earlier because the whole thing starts to be messy with all these lines. Anyway, so what we're going to do now, we are going to select our bot controller, our newly created bot controller, and we are going to add a sensor to it. So add new sensor, open it up, and we want this sensor to be a radius of about 25 meters. So the awareness of our non-player character will be 25 meters around it. And the update rate, let's say that we wanted to reassess the situation every 10 times per second. So what we are looking for here is to detect with this sensor if there is another bot controller in proximity or an item, any item. So based on that, we're going to be able later on in code to determine should the robot should go for gathering the item or he's ready for combat. So what we're going to do, we're going to use the actual objects that are picked by this sensor, and then we're going to be able to in code then take decisions. So we are going to look for two type of object, empty for another bot controller and static mesh for a item, either a health or a ammo. So we are going to add a filter at the bottom here that is going to say that if the name of these objects that have been picked up by our sensor is either create item or bot controller, they're going to be a volume that is in range of this sensor. If I just set it back to 0 quick and to have an update, and now we can see that there are 6 objects in proximity. We know that there is at least 1 robot and there must be another 5 crate in the range of 25 meter. We have our non-player character entity created. An entity is a reusable hierarchy of objects. So we're going to create a new asset of the type entity. We have our bot controller 0 selected here, and we're going to go under MicroBots in our library and asset, new entity, and we're going to call that entity NPC_bot. And I'm going to create it. It's going to take a second to compile it. And now I can safely remove my bot, and I can, in example, double click here to move the 3D cursor, and I can simply drag and drop NPC bot. And now I am going to have my robot recreated exactly the way we set it up. So like that, we can start creating an army of these guys at a very low cost. Next, what I'm going to do, I am going to start creating these guys at runtime. So I'm going to go under my coding layout, and I am going to select my MicroBots and bot controller. I am going to declare a few global variables to get us started. These variables will be the actual state of our AI later on, but we're going to declare them now. We have the default state, which is 0 to assess the situation, travel to another location in search of either item or another robot. If we have an item locked in, we're going to enter the gather state. And if we got another robot locked in, we are going to enter the combat state. So next, we are going to create 2 set of array. We are going to go over here, just below that. And one is going to be an array of bots that is going to hold the number of frags each and every robot currently have. And we are going to later on display that on screen. We are going to create another array of NPC. The NPC will basically contain the controller and all the necessary variable of our AI to function properly. As you can see, I declare 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 new robots, so plus our player. So 8 robots will be interacting inside this sector 1. Each of them basically containing a different color to make them unique. And now what we're going to do, we are going to add a few more variables here at the top for our sound buffer. Let's create a bit of space here. We are going to go grab our deactivated sound buffer and our item ammo sound buffer. And I'm going to make that item ammo sound buffer is actually global because we're going to reuse it to add another type of collectible. What we are going to add is if the robot die and another bot is passing on top of it, it's going to gather its ammo. So like that is going to make the game a bit more interesting. So I am going to need that sound buffer, that item ammo sound buffer, to be accessible from my collectibles script that we're going to modify in a moment. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new function callback that is going to happen when I click the start. So I am going to put that here, and I'm going to put that right below get attachment. What we're going to do here is when we start, we are going to grab the first scene that is currently loaded, in this case, our MicroBots scene, and we are going to grab our NPC bot here as an entity. And for all the NPC that we have created up here as an array, we are going to process them one by one. We are going to create a new entity, and we are going to respawn this entity. So we're going to need to have a new function that it's called respawn. Respawn will take in parameter newly created bot controller, our newly created bot controller, and the current scene. And what we're doing here is pretty standard. What we are doing is grabbing our robot. We're going to restart our action controller in the case that the robot is dead and needs to respawn. And here we are going to use a function of our navigation map to give us any random point. Any random point in the blue area that we're having here, our navigation map. Give us any random point. We're going to declare a matrix here. We're going to access the controller physics object, and we're going to access the first collider, which is our capsule here. And we are going to say that for the translation X, Y, and Z of that matrix is going to be our span point X, Y, and for Z, we're going to offset it a bit with the height of our capsule plus the radius. Like that, any robot that will respawn will be right on top of the ground. We are going to set this transformation to our physics object, and we are going to play the sound to actually, as the robot reload its gun. So we're going to get the deactivated attachment that is located and attached on the spine of our bot here. So we're going to get that sound source, and we are going to set the item ammo that we have declared up there, and we're going to play it once. That simulate basically the same thing as if it was picking up a crate of ammo. We are going to then grab its health member variable and its ammo member variable, and we're going to reset that back to 100. So that goes for our respawn. Now, if we go below, we are going to get our bot attachment after we respawn, and we are going to set the name of our NPC to be the name that is declared here. They're going to be called red, green, blue, purple, yellow, just for demonstration purposes, really. And we are going to get our base color 0 that we have declared, our variable, and we are going to assign the variable the color that have been declared up here. Next, we are going to switch this entry of the table to be the actual data that we're going to need for our artificial intelligence. So we're going to have the state, which is going to start with assessing the situation, our controller, our newly created NPC bot that have been created from our entity. We're going to have a sync for time, the map path, the current navigation path that is going to follow, map point, which will be, we are basically at this point in the map path and we want to go to that point. And we are going to have here the unique ID of an item crate that have been locked in. Target, same thing, the unique ID of a target that is locked in. And shoot will be used in exactly the same way as we're using it for our player, and basically contain the time in milliseconds since the last time the NPC, our AI, have been trying to shoot at a target. So now we are going to create the bots array here that is going to help us to display the number of frags, the number of kills each and every robot have on screen later on when we're going to deal with the 2D heads-up display. So for all object in our scene at this point, find the one that contained the substring bot controller. We should have 8 at this point. And if it is, if we found it, simply add to the bots array the controller, that properties, which is going to be the object, and set the frag to 0. And we are going to want to also respawn finally our player as well. And so we are getting our object, which is bot controller, the default one that we have been playing with since the beginning. Get the bot and rename the bot to be white. Since all the other ones have a color as a name, we are going to call our bot white as well. Respawn it the same way we have respawned the NPC here. Give a random point on the map, restart the action controller, and reset also the rotation to make sure that the player doesn't get too disoriented. So the next thing that we're going to do now is we have actually modified the item ammo when we are basically respawning. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to locate our deactivated sound and make sure that when the actual when the robot actually gets hit, we're going to do something like we did earlier by checking the asset unique ID. So at this point in the code, when our robot gets hit, we want to make sure that we have the deactivate sound that is assigned as the sound buffer. So we are checking the current sound buffer asset unique ID. And if it is different than the deactivated asset unique ID, then make sure that we set the sound buffer to deactivate it and then stop playing whatever was there and play it again. So that is good for the bot controller. I'm going to build and save. Now I'm going to add into my collectible script here that I'm going to add another type, collect items here. I'm going to add another type of item that I can pick, which is going to be the number of ammo that the dead robot have. What I'm going to do in bot controller, I am going to make my get attachment here. I'm going to make get attachment a public function here by pasting the following code. I am accessing the Lua global table and say that get attachment equal to my get attachment function here. So like that, under collect items, I will have access to it. If this is the case here for the create items, and I'm going to go below that and I'm going to add a bit more code that is going to check if if my item is a bot controller. I'm having an extra and here that I can remove here. So if the item name is actually a bot controller, we are going to check, we're going to get our current controller robot as we initialized here. So the item also have another dead bot. We are going to get the attachment at 0 for both of them, for both our bot controller and our second bot. So we have the current bot that is alive and the other one that is presumably dead. So we're going to check if the dead ammo, we're going to grab the variable of the dead guy ammo, and we're going to check if the supposedly dead guy is really dead, if its health is 0. And we're going to check if his health is at 0 and his ammo is greater than 0. If it's the case, what we're going to do, we're going to grab our current robot ammo variable and we're going to add the dead guy ammo to it. Reset the dead guy ammo to 0. And now in the same way we did in the bot controller, we are going to play the item. We are going to set to our deactivated sound data sound source, the item ammo, to give the illusion that our robot reload is gone as it passed through the dead robot and steal its ammo. So we're going to build and save that. I am going to save my project and now I'm going to be able to test this. So I'm going to go under default and I'm going to click Shift and 2 and enter wireframe because we start to have a lot of stuff on our first render layer. I might also want to turn off the display of the navigation mesh here and simply keep the navigation map visible, at least for now. And I'm going to save and I'm going to click Shift and play to ensure that I'm saved and play. I forgot to take out the limbs of the robot. I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go select my default robot, and I'm going to go under skeletal mesh, go back to geometry, turn that off. We're going to restore that back later on in the code. So I'm going to hold shift again and push play. My game is now okay. As you can see, I respawn at a random point. I was located somewhere here under the, how do you call that? The landing platform, let's say. So let's move inside our world, and now let's try to find another robot so we can shoot. Go back to our first, and now to our second render layer, and now we can see that there's a bunch of them. There's one located here, another one located there, and we are close to which one? There should be one over there. So if I pass, shoot a little. And if I pass over here, I should see one right there. I'm going to go close enough, and I am going to shoot him. Let's see if he's going to die properly. I am going to shoot him, and he's dead. And as I pass, oh, I am having a little bug here. The get attachment have not been set properly, so I'm going to go back in bot controller, and I'm going to rebuild bot controller, and I am going to stop the game, and I'm going to restart, and I should have a robot nearby. Yes, so I'm going to go aim for this guy, and I'm going to test back that code. I am going to pull at the same time my bot, which is called white at this point, and properties member variable. Let's see my number of ammo. I'm gonna go closer because I'm not sure if I'm shooting at him. I don't have a name yet. Okay, so I killed the guy, and I'm gonna pass, and I steal his ammo. My ammo is back at 100, over 100, because it is clamped here. So this is exactly what I was expecting. Everything seems to work properly, and now we can move on and start adding more complex behaviors to our robot.